Oh, it's so nice. Look at this. Today we're going to take a look at a Japanese exclusive pro wrestling game that many claim to be the greatest wrestling title. Could this be true? You guys want my opinion? Well, to be honest, I think that this game is When I recently covered Virtual Pro Wrestling 64, I talked about how its US counterpart was WCW vs. NWO World Tour. And yeah, we discovered that they're not exactly the same, but you can definitely see the similarities. WCW NWO Revenge would drop as a Western exclusive sequel to World Tour, not seeing a Japanese release. But on January 8th, 2000, Japan would receive their own exclusive in Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. This one would fall in between two WWF Aki titles that bared many similarities to it, one of which also saw a release in Japan. But regardless, this one would stand out as a very unique and memorable experience. So let's find out exactly why. Starting with the intro, we see that the attention and dedication that the developers put into the previous Aki titles carries over here. We see a bunch of All Japan Pro Wrestling superstars, wrestlers performing all sorts of high-energy moves and taunts, all set to some fitting music. In fact, it's the same music used for the intro in WWF WrestleMania 2000. Even the ending of the intro is quite similar to the one seen in that game. And it's important to note that this build of the game engine was based on WrestleMania 2000, so there will be some similarities, some differences, and some advancements that we wouldn't see here in the US until WWF No Mercy. So you're looking at the menu for the first time and you're thinking, "Damn it, why can't I speak Japanese?" Well, most of the game's menus are very similar, if not identical, to the ones from WrestleMania 2000, so if you're struggling to navigate this one, you can go to that game as a reference. There are also some translator apps out there like Google Translate, but they are inconsistent. First and foremost, this roster is massive, bigger than any other Aki title, and though the game carries an All Japan Pro Wrestling license, we see other promotions and wrestlers featured here under generic names and appearances, just like the game's predecessor. But with a quick hop into the game's edit mode, you can easily update all of these options so that their likenesses are spot on. Fans of Japanese wrestling should find more than a few noteworthy inclusions here, with the likes of Giant Baba, Kenta Kobashi, Antonio Inoki, Tatsumi Fujinami, Masahiro Chono, and many more. For those of you American wrestling fans that may feel lost in the abundance of Japanese wrestlers, we also see quite a few names here that passed through the WWF and WCW at one point or another, such as Vader, Johnny Ace, Mike Barton, aka Bart Gunn, Kamala, Yuji Nagata, Scott Norton.
You want to take him down? Well, let's take him down!
Jushin Thunder Liger, Mike Awesome, Taka Michinoku, Terry Funk, Dr. Death, Andre the Giant, Ultimo Dragon. I can go on forever, baby! You'll even find a decent selection of shoot fighters, which we'll talk about more when we get into match types. Bottom line, this roster is loaded, and it's clear to see that you don't specifically need to be a fan of Japanese wrestling to find somebody that you're familiar with. There seems to be somebody for just about every fan out there. Maybe you're saying, no, you're wrong, there really isn't. Well, there's still hope. The game's Create a Wrestler mode lets you draft up your own prototype of the perfect wrestler, or even recreate your favorite grapplers that aren't already here. And with moves, taunts, and some other assets from past Aki games, this is achieved quite easily. Feel like seeing Bret Hart in the game? Go ahead and make him. Do you want to relive some of Jericho's moments in Japan? do it. And just like other Aki titles that came before and after, this Create mode utilizes the same face, hair, attire, and accessory selections as the in-game models, so unlike many other wrestling titles throughout the years, your creations won't look out of place here. And while we're on the topic of Create a Wrestler, yes, this one looks a lot like the one seen in WrestleMania 2000, but there are some additions here that set it apart. For instance, the detailed mask creator that allows the player to incorporate all sorts of finishing touches such as different horns, patterns, and of course colors. I would have loved to see more included attires from wrestlers in other promotions, but I'm thankful that they put as much time and effort into this mode as they did. Once you've selected a wrestler, or wrestlers, and you're ready to begin your match, you'll first be greeted by a series of entrances. 2 of the 3 previous Aki games featured quite detailed entrances with unique walk animations, taunts, pyro, and lighting. This game doesn't feature quite that level of detail, omitting those taunts and unique walking animations. However, something that was included here but not seen in those other games is how wrestlers are first shown backstage, at precisely 10 to 7, before actually entering into the stage or ring area, giving this one a distinctive feel. We do hear some unique themes here, but not for everybody. You'll notice that many wrestlers are given generic tracks. Arenas also play a large part in the entrances here, as some arenas will feature smaller aisles that lead down to the corner of the ring, while others feature grander stages with long elevated ramps. And you can actually take the battle out to this ramp, which is always fun. These selections can also change the Battle Royal matches as well, as specific arena layouts lead to wrestlers entering into the match from different areas, which is really cool to see in such an early 3D wrestling title. Your arena selection alters not only the stage area, but also beyond, with some venues appearing smaller, while others consist of domes and outdoor stadiums, which actually makes quite the visual difference during gameplay. This is just one of the many unique differences that sets this one apart from the other titles. Before the bell rings, we see in-ring introductions, complete with announcing. Although only the featured AJPW wrestlers have their names spoken in the game, with the rest being set to generic introductions, but nevertheless this was quite the impressive feat for the time on a cartridge-based console. The control layout at this point has spanned a few games, so you'll probably be comfortable with the weak and strong strike and grapple system. You know, tap A for weak tie-up, hold it for strong, same for strikes. It's really straightforward, and next to the SmackDown series, it's one of the most easy pick-up-and-play control layouts you'll find in a wrestling series. These button commands carry over to grounded opponents as well, with A performing different ground grapples, and B strikes, such as elbow drops and stomps. Same thing with cornered opponents as well. The shoulder buttons are still reserved for countering and blocking incoming grapples and strikes, as well as pinning and picking up laying opponents, while the C buttons perform tasks such as entering and exiting the ring, grabbing weapons, climbing turnbuckles, and running. We saw a few features from WCW NWO Revenge that were dropped for WrestleMania 2000, but they return here, like the Test of Strength battle, which occurs when 2 wrestlers attempt to grapple at the same exact time. The player with the quickest button mashing abilities will more often than not come out on top. The striking combo system also returns here, which allows specific wrestlers to dish out a combination of kicks, punches, knees, and elbows, followed by a takedown. If you played as Goldberg much in Revenge, you'll probably remember this feature. Along with the returning features, we see some innovative additions to the gameplay here, such as the running grapple, which we would end up getting in No Mercy, but it did in fact get its start here. Now this may seem like a minor feature, but for my money it's one of the things that the previous games were really missing, and even when I go back to play games like Revenge and WrestleMania 2000, I instinctively attempt them even though it wasn't yet a feature in those games. The Spirit system returns here, which requires players to successfully perform moves, taunts, and reversals in order to fill their meter, which in turn will allow for finishers to be performed. But new and exclusive to Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 are Super Finishers, or Burning Finishers as I've heard people refer to them. These are specific to certain wrestlers and allow for a secondary, more powerful finisher to be executed by engaging your special state twice. After tapping the control stick, once your spirit meter has filled, tap it a second time and your super finisher will now be available. This state can only be executed once per match, so it's best to use it wisely, and you'll most likely need it in those harder difficulties. Because this game is tough. On the hardest settings, it can be outright torture, but on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes wrestlers will just stand there and stare at each other on the easiest difficulty, so it's best to play with these settings a bit to find a good balance based on your skill level. Match types are pretty straightforward here, nothing extravagant. You'll see basic one-on-one matches, tag, 3-way, 4-way, and one of my favorites, the Battle Royal, which allows up to 40 participants. We also see team matches, as were featured in the game's predecessor, but no cage, ladder, or anything like that here. There are weapons here, and just like the other Aki titles, these can be plucked straight from the crowd. This time they can be taken into the ring, however once dropped, they just kind of disappear. I like how they fling out of your wrestler's hands when you go for a taunt or something. Though not technically a match type, you can turn on shoot fighting rules in the match options menu. This opens up a completely new way to play the game, as here matches are based around strikes, takedowns, and submissions. Pins are replaced with a 10 count and out system, while actions like Irish whips and jumping from the turnbuckles are eliminated. I guess that technically makes this game the first MMA release, beating Ultimate Fighting Championship by a few months. In addition to exhibition matches, we also see the League and Tournament modes return from the first game. League offers up to 12 wrestlers the chance to battle it out in a round-robin style tournament, giving participants multiple opportunities to earn points based on wins and losses. The wrestler with the most points at the end will be the winner. The tournament mode here is of the traditional format, seen in WrestleMania 2000 as the King of the Ring mode. Rally is new here, and is based on the Create a Pay-Per-View format, where the player designs their own card and plays through matches or assigns fully CPU-controlled bouts. This is also where some of the game's unlockables are found, but most of them will be had in the game's main mode of play, Royal Road Succession. If you've played the Road to WrestleMania mode in WrestleMania 2000, this is comparable to what we would see there. But unlike that mode, you won't be taking part in weekly TV shows and pay-per-view events, instead competing in various tournaments, matches, and title opportunities. The Triple Crown Championship, Unified World Tag Team Championships, and All Asia Tag Team Championships are represented here in this mode, which presents itself as an entire AJPW tour. As previously mentioned, this is where many of the game's wrestlers, moves, and creation pieces will need to be unlocked, sometimes requiring specific wrestlers to do so, encouraging multiple playthroughs. Other unlockables simply require the player to meet certain conditions. For example, making your opponent bleed will unlock Abdullah the Butcher, which makes me feel uncomfortable. Visually, we see some slight upgrades when compared to the first game in the series, like better textures and more detailed faces. The game still suffers from clipping issues, which I've seldomly heard complaints about. I think most of the visual shortcomings can be overlooked due to the gameplay. It is nice though to see a greater level of detail in the models, arenas, and animations. And on that topic, a lot of the moves have also been reanimated and feature more realistic flow and timing. There are multiple options for the appearance of your referee, and while they still only appear here as 2D animated sprites, they definitely add to the personality of this title. And look, they're not all Japanese. The music and sound effects here are, of course, fantastic, from mat slams to punches and even that ever so famous ring bell low blow. It just all sounds so good and very nostalgic to those that grew up with really any game in the series. The original soundtrack might sound familiar if you grew up with WrestleMania 2000 as I did, and features that iconic Aki sound with heavy guitars mixed with synth, accompanied by thick drums. I have to say that all of the games in this lineup are playlist worthy, so if you find yourself working out or punching in keys at your desk and you're looking for something to listen to, you really can't go wrong with any of these games. So that brings us to the big question. Is this the greatest game in the series? Well, I think if you're basing that decision on the sheer amount of wrestlers, options, gameplay, and exclusive features, then yeah, this has everything you could want. Better yet, if you're a big fan of Japanese wrestling, I'm sure that this one reserves a cozy little spot in your heart. I didn't grow up with this one, so I have more nostalgic attachment to games like Revenge and WrestleMania 2000, but I sure can guarantee that had I received this one upon its release, my love for this game would be even greater than it is, and I do love this game. I recommend that every fan of the genre, and even those that might not be, give this one a go because it's undeniable that this game is the pinnacle of wrestling video game greatness. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2! It's the sequel to the one that we did last time! It's got Giant Bob on the front! He's so big! He's a big guy! It's got Vader! He's gonna Vader bomb, break your back, yeah! He's as big as a Cadillac! Whoa! It's got some other Japanese guys that I don't know. Because I'm not very knowledgeable about Japanese wrestling. Yeah. I just want to take a moment to thank the fans of this channel, old and new. I've been making videos for many years, and though I'm older these days with kids and a lot less time on my hands, I still love making these videos, and I truly appreciate your constant support for the channel. So with that, I say thanks for watching and good night. We'll see you next time.